the Turnip. There were two brothers who were both soldiers. The one was rich and the other poor. The poor man thought he would try to better himself. So, pulling off his red coat, he became a gardener and dug his ground well and sowed turnips. You know, without turnips, we wouldn't have been able to have the Industrial Revolution as early as we did, because they were vital for moving from three yearly crop rotation to 4 yearly crop rotation. Without a fallow year. Or it might have been 4 yearly to 3 yearly. I don't know. Either way, it's changed history by meaning that we didn't have to have a fallow year, which is where you don't plant anything in a field for the soil to recover, because you could plant complementary plants so that each year you were planting a plant that was taking something from the soil but also giving something back, so that you didn't get like soil that didn't have enough nitrogen in it that you had to then fertilize, because the plants would individually do their thing and it would replenish some sort of nutrient the next plant would need, and then that way you didn't end up with a situation where you either left it empty for a year and didn't make any money off of that or any food, or you continuously planted crops in it to the point where the soil was barren and there was no nutrients left in it, and then you couldn't plant anything. And in order to get it back to plantable condition would take you years and a lot of money and a lot of effort. Thank you, and well, thank you for attending my turnip TED Talk. Back to the story. When the seed came up, there was one plant bigger than all the rest, and it kept getting larger and larger and seemed as if it would never cease growing, so that it might have been called the Prince of Turnips, for there was never such a one seen before, and never will again. At last it was so big that it filled a cart, and 2 oxen could hardly draw it, and the gardener knew not what in the world to do with it, nor whether it would be a blessing or a curse to him. And one day he said to himself, "What shall I do with it? If I sell it, it will bring no more than any other, and for eating, the little turnips are better than this, and the best thing perhaps is to carry it and give it to the king as a mark of respect." True. Sometimes when you get like a vegetable that's like way bigger, it's also tougher. Like turnip, personally, I hate hate like how it tastes and smells. But plenty of other like carrots are the same too. Like if you leave them too long, they get really like woody and they're not tasteful anymore. Tasty anymore. We're taking it to the king. Then he yoked his oxen, threw the turnip to the cart, and gave it to the king. "What a wonderful thing," said the king. "I have seen many strange things, but such a monster as this I have never seen. Where did you get the seed, or is it only your good luck? If so, you are a true child of fortune." "Ah, no," answered the gardener, "I am no child of fortune. I am a poor soldier who never could get enough to live upon. So I laid aside my red coat and set to work tilling the ground. I have a brother who is rich, and your Majesty knows him well, and all the world knows him, but because I am poor, everybody forgets me." Story of life. History of humankind. The king then took pity on him and said, "You shall be poor no longer. I will give you so much that you shall be even richer than your brother." Then he gave him gold and lands and flocks, and made him so rich that his brother's fortune could not at all be compared with his. And when the brother heard of all this, and how a turnip had made the gardener so rich, he envied him sorely, and bethought himself how he could contrive to get the same good fortune for himself. However, he determined to manage more cleverly than his brother, and got together a rich present of gold and fine horses for the king, and thought he must have a much larger gift in return, for if his brother had received so much for only a turnip, what must his present be worth? I read ahead a bit and so The king took the gift very graciously, and said he knew not what to give in return more valuable, a wonderful and the great turnip. So the soldier was forced to put it into a cart and drag it home with him. And when he reached the home, he knew not upon whom to vent his rage and spite, and at length wicked thoughts came into his head, and he resolved to kill his brother. Imagine killing your brother over a giant turnip. So he hired some villains to murder him. And having shown them where to lie in ambush, he went to his brother and said, "Dear brother, I have found a hidden treasure. Let us go and dig it up and share it between us." The other had no suspicions of his roguery, so they went out together, and as they were travelling along, the murderers rushed out upon him, bound him, and were going to hang him on a tree. But whilst they were getting all ready, they heard the trampling of a horse at a distance, which so frightened them that they pushed their prisoner neck and shoulders together into a sack, and swung him up by a cord to the tree, where they left him dangling and ran away. Meantime he worked and worked away till he made a hole large enough to put out his head. When the horseman came up, he proved to be a student, a merry fellow, who was journeying along on his nag, which is just like a really old horse that's is the end of its working life, or its life in general. And singing he went. As soon as the man in the sack saw him passing under the tree, he cried out, good morning to thee, my friend." The student looked about everywhere, and seeing no one, and not knowing where the voice came from, cried out, "Who calls me?" Then the man in the tree answered, "Lift up thine eyes, for, behold, here I sit in the sack of wisdom. Here have I in a short time learned great and wondrous things. Compared to this seat, all the learning of the schools is an empty air. A little longer, and I shall know all that a man can know, and shall come forth wiser than the wisest of mankind. Here I discern the signs and motions of the heavens and the stars, the laws that control the winds, the number of the sands on the seashore, the healing of the sick, the virtues of all simples, of birds, more birds. I have a story without birds, and of precious stones. Wert thou but once here, my friend, thou wouldst feel and own the power of knowledge." The student listened to all this and wondered much. At last he said, "Blessed be the day and hour where I found you. Cannot you contrive to let me into the sack for a little while?" And then the other answered, as if very unwillingly, "A little space I may allow thee to sit here, if thou wilt reward me well, and entreat me kindly. But thou must tarry yet an hour below, till I have learnt some little matters that are yet unknown to me." So the student sat himself down and waited a while, for the time hung heavy on him. And he begged earnestly that he might ascend forthwith, for his thirst for knowledge was great. Then the other pretended to give way, and said, "Thou must let the sack of wisdom descend by untying yonder cord, and then thou shalt enter." So the student let him down, opened the sack, and set him free. "Now then," cried he, "let me ascend quickly." As he began to put himself into the sack heels first. "Wait a while," said the gardener, "that is not the way." And then he pushed him in head first, tied up the sack, and soon swung up the searcher after wisdom dangling in the air. "How is it with thee, friend?" he said. "Dost thou not feel that wisdom comes unto thee? Rest there in peace till thou art a wiser man than thou wert." So saying, he trotted off on the student's nag, and left the poor fellow to gather wisdom till somebody should come and let him down. It's one way to deal with it.